Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz run it back. But this time, boxing rules. The boxing match is scheduled to take place in March. This is one of the strangest fight announcements, I would say, so far the year. I mean, probably of the past couple years, seeing two former UFC stars get into the boxing ring against one another. Obviously, Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal fought previously, so this is a rematch. They fought for the BMF belt some years ago. It was stopped due to cuts that Nate Diaz suffered, and it was not very BMF worthy, in all honesty, how it ended. But the fight, Masvidal was definitely winning. They just dropped that they're going to do a boxing match. Now, I don't have details for sure about how many rounds, but I think I have a good eye on what we're going to be looking at here with this Masvidal and Diaz boxing match. I want to get into it, so make sure you guys smash the like button. If you're new, subscribe. Constant news dropping. Another MMA Boxing Crossover, this time two MMA fighters, UFC former stars, right? Masvidal retired last year. After the loss to Gilbert Burns, he said he's out. I had a feeling the retirement would not last. And if you look at Masvidal's Twitter, a little bit ago, he said unretired. So we knew he had a fight looming. I thought that both Masvidal and Nate Diaz were in talks with the UFC about making a return. Not that they were going to step in the boxing ring against one another. Because even word on the street was Nate Diaz was in talks to make a UFC return at UFC 300. I thought, okay, Masvidal says unretired. Maybe the stars are aligning. They do the rematch at UFC 300. But no, they go in a different direction, the boxing route. I know in their minds, they think, oh, we can cash now because we're going to be, the holders of the power, unlike when the UFC holds the power. But I think their fight in boxing does significantly less. It's definitely with less fan appeal. Now, obviously, assuming it's not on at the same time as the UFC, I'll watch it. I'll tune into it. I feel like they're going to probably do it on a pay-per-view. We don't know what promotion. It might be Game Bread Boxing, Masvidal's promotion. So then could it potentially be through Fight Pass? Or are they going to somehow do a Fight Pass pay-per-view? Because Masvidal is still technically contractually obligated to the UFC. They gave him the thumbs up of approval to box against Nate Diaz. I think for Masvidal, this fight against Nate Diaz is part of like an attempted two-fight comeback. Because if he beats Nate Diaz and he beats him rather convincingly, maybe more impressively than Jake Paul did, that's the fight that he wants, okay? Masvidal's eyes, I think, are on big money matchups, and a Nate Diaz boxing match certainly is going to bring in a lot of cash flow. The Jake Paul fight, I think, would be bigger. Obviously, they were friends for a little while, training together. Then they had that falling out. They kind of seemed to come back together. I'd assume that they're actually cool. But if somehow their fight gets booked, expect a ton of fabricated beef between the two. Now, let's actually talk about this Masvidal versus Nate Diaz boxing match. It's just weird to me. You dig back to their first fight, which it's a long time ago now. I got to dig into what year it was. I think it was 2019, if I'm not wrong. Let me get Tapology up real quick. Let me see. Their last fight took place at UFC 244 in 2019. Yep, BMF belt was on the line. 3 rounds. Masvidal was destroying Nate Diaz for the most part. But Nate, tough as nails. I mean, he kind of came on a little bit in the 3rd round, we can say. I mean, he had a little bit more success than he did previously, but he was getting busted up. I mean, they stopped it because his face was absolutely destroyed. Masvidal rocked him on multiple occasions. With the boxing gloves on, this is going to be weird, though. I'm assuming 10-ounce boxing gloves. We haven't seen Masvidal box before. We saw Nate Diaz box against Jake Paul. He was rather unimpressive against Paul. I mean, he looked okay. He still went 10 rounds. He didn't get knocked out. We'll give him some credit on that. Him and Masvidal with boxing gloves. I'm playing it out, and I think that Masvidal will be more mobile and faster. I do think that the boxing match between the two will have competitive moments for Diaz for sure, but Nate does not bring much of a power threat with the 4-ounce gloves, in all honesty, unless he's really landing perfectly clean and he has an opponent gassed out, like when Leon got rocked or when he rocked Conor. But with 10-ounce gloves, there's not going to be like a significant punching threat from Diaz. I expect Masvidal to walk him down a bit and throw some hard shots and land some clean ones, but I don't think it's going to be enough so to knock him out. I have a feeling that this boxing match might be an absolute dud. It might be one of those just awkward fights between two guys that don't specialize in boxing. They're MMA fighters. I would rather have seen the rematch in MMA. That's more exciting to me. In boxing, I think I'm going to pick Masvidal to win a decision. I have a feeling that it's going to be 8 rounds. I could see it as an 8-round boxing match, some kind of main event with a weird undercard. Masvidal at the top. Maybe somehow they get Anthony Pettis on the card. Maybe we get Darren Till on the card. I don't know. I'm really reaching here. Maybe they put Mike Perry on it. I have no idea. I mean, I know he's with Bare Knuckle FC, but they allow you to fight elsewhere. There's a chance that he might take a boxing match. But the fan interest, I think, is going to be on the lower side. I don't know, guys. I definitely want to hear in the comments. Is this a fight that even interests you in boxing? Because for me, when I saw that Diaz versus Masvidal was announced, it was in my live chat. And I'm thinking in MMA, I'm like, oh shit, are we going to get it at 300? That'd be a sick fight to have on the card. Instead, they're doing it under boxing rules, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. I know it makes money, and at least they get to throw shots at each other. It's going to be straight hands. But in boxing, it doesn't get me hyped. These guys are not purist boxers. They're not specialist boxers. They're not elite boxers. They're solid MMA fighters past their best days who are going to throw down with boxing gloves. I'm going to say Masvidal's speed advantage is the biggest factor in the fight, and he is able to outwork Nate Diaz. And then I think after the fight immediately, it's going to be Jake Paul, I want you. Jake Paul commented on Masvidal's tweet a while ago. Yeah, go fight Nate Diaz. Go get Dana to let you out of the contract. I feel like it's a test in the waters of boxing. And then I'm telling you, with a win, I will guarantee that Masvidal tries to turn the attention towards a Jake Paul fight and build that. He's seeing a huge opportunity to cash out, like to box and make more money maybe than he made in his UFC fights to close out of his career. We got to kind of call it genius. Like, yeah, the fight is not that compelling. Masvidal, Diaz in boxing, sure. But the implications for specifically Masvidal with a win, it's a huge Jake Paul payday, which I guarantee you Masvidal wants a piece of. I knew he wanted it before. He wanted to box Jake Paul. He was interested in that prior to even retiring from MMA. He talked about boxing Canelo at one point too. Now we actually have a realistic possibility of him fighting Jake Paul. It's a weird spot for Jake Paul because, right, he's still got the MMA guys that want to rip his head off. They want to get their bag. And I feel like it does make sense. It sells more than him fighting some no-name boxer like Andre August. Nobody gave a crap about that fight. I watched the highlight. He knocked him out in the first round with an uppercut. Andre August looked like a horrible boxer. I'd assume that Jake Paul would also beat Jorge Masvidal in boxing too. I'd be curious to see it because nonetheless, at least Masvidal has a bit of punching power, a bit of speed on him. Maybe he can threaten Jake Paul a little more, especially than somebody like a Nate Diaz did, who's more of a feather-fisted fighter in all honesty. But it doesn't really get me excited. It's kind of like this Jake Paul circus. I thought he was more dialing into pure boxing, but the circus is back. Masvidal is going to fight against Nate. He beats Nate. He's going to get the Jake Paul fight. I guarantee it. Jake's laughing at it. He's excited. I think he sees Masvidal as a super winnable fight that gets him even more money and just another win on the boxing record. But it's not beating a purist boxer. And it seems like Jake Paul's goals are to shift to actual, true, traditionalist boxing as opposed to just fighting MMA fighters. But he can't seem to get away from that knack. That's his market. MMA fighters want to box him. Masvidal's probably next up. Yeah, he's got to get past Nate, but come on, bro. Nate didn't look good against Jake Paul. He looks slow out there. Masvidal can beat him in boxing too. I could see Nate having some moments, but like I said, he doesn't have the power to keep Masvidal off of him. I think Masvidal touches him with some combination shots. It's going to be interesting to see Masvidal in boxing gloves. The fight that made way more sense, like as a fan, what I wanted to see was Masvidal, former Miami bare knuckle street fighter, take on Mike Perry in the BKFC. But for the amount of money he would have made in the Mike Perry fight, I would say it's equivalent or potentially even less than a Nate Diaz fight, with the higher possibility of him getting fucked up and then killing the Jake Paul fight, which is his plan thereafter. So I see why he went down this route. The fight that nobody asked for in boxing, Masvidal versus Nate Diaz. We thought we might be getting it in MMA. We thought we might be getting it at UFC 300. Instead, it's a boxing event in March. Don't know what card, don't know the undercard, don't know if it'll even be the main event. Expect more details to come soon, but I had to give my take on it. I don't love it. I'm not overly interested in it. I will watch it if it, lines up well with me not missing a UFC card. Let me know in the comments, guys. Do you like this fight? Are you tuning into it? Are you excited for it? And who you got winning? I think most people are going to lean Masvidal with me as my eyes absolutely stinging over here. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the support. Constant content dropping. A little under the weather. Still had to drop this news video. Had to drop my reaction to this for my people. Thank you guys all for watching. Smash the likes if you're new, subscribe. And if you got nothing to say in the comments, but you just enjoy the content, as always, drop a W in the chat to boost the algorithm for your boy. And yeah, don't forget to turn the post notifications on. You don't want to miss a video. Put them on all, not just personalized. Because daily content, daily live streams, we got a ton of stuff dropping on the MMA Experts channel, and you don't want to miss it. Thank you guys. Peace.